Welcome to Vidiot Vizards. If you enjoy these kinds of deep dives, go ahead and hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. It really helps us out. All right, today we are getting into India's latest annual budget. And in a world where the economy feels, well, a little chaotic, this document is so much more than just a balance sheet. Think of it as a strategic roadmap for one of the biggest economies on the planet. So let's break down how India is planning to tackle the future.
And really, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, you've got global trade wars heating up, financial markets that are all over the place, and just a general cloud of uncertainty. So how does a major economy like India not just stay afloat, but actually aim for real sustained growth? Well, this budget is their detailed answer.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Here it is, the official plan for the 2026-2027 budget, presented by the Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman. It lays out a financial strategy with a total expenditure of about $583 billion. Yes, billion with a B.
Now, to really understand the strategy here, you first have to understand the environment. And right now, India, like a lot of nations, is navigating some seriously choppy economic waters. The pressure from the outside is pretty intense. We're talking about punishing tariffs, markets that are so volatile, foreign investors have pulled out billions, ongoing trade uncertainty, and on top of all that, a sharp drop in the value of the rupee. These are the major headwinds this budget is designed to fight against. But here's the thing that's kind of wild. Even with all those challenges swirling around, India's economy is still projected to grow somewhere between 6.8 and 7.2% in the next year. Now, that is a little softer than the year before, but it still blows past most other major economies. It just goes to show you there's a real resilience there that the government is trying to build on. And that brings us right to the core philosophy of this whole budget. It's a very conscious, very deliberate bet on a long-term strategy. This slide really highlights the big pivot. Last year's budget had some of those big populist giveaways, things like major tax cuts for the middle class. This year, it's been called a budget without fireworks. The focus has clearly shifted away from short-term crowd pleasers and toward building up long-term strength from the inside. And this graphic, which comes straight from the budget documents, perfectly illustrates the thinking behind that shift. It lays out the guiding principles: action over ambivalence, reform over rhetoric, people over populism. The whole idea is to create stability, be disciplined with finances, and get sustained growth. Basically, to turn all that potential into actual performance.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi really summed it up perfectly. He said the goal is to stop putting band-aids on long-term problems and instead to build solutions that are actually gonna last. It's all about creating predictability and building trust on the world stage.
So, what does this long-term plan actually look like on paper? Let's break down the two main pillars of the government's growth blueprint. Pillar number one is a massive, and I mean massive, investment in infrastructure. A staggering $133 billion is being set aside just for that in the new fiscal year. This is a huge signal that the government is betting on building the physical foundations for future growth. And this chart just drives that point home. I mean, look at that jump in public capital expenditure, or CAPEX. That is not some small, gradual increase. It's a huge leap. It shows an incredibly aggressive commitment to building everything from roads and railways to digital networks. Okay, the second pillar of the blueprint is all about strengthening manufacturing at home. For a long time, the government has wanted to make manufacturing a bigger piece of the economic pie. And this budget really doubles down on that to create jobs and to rely less on imports. Now, what's really crucial here is that this is not a scattergun approach. The plan is targeting 7 very specific, very strategic sectors. We're talking about high-tech, high-value industries like semiconductors and pharmaceuticals, but also essentials like textiles and chemicals. The goal is to build a really robust supply chain right there in India. A multi-billion-dollar plan sounds great, but how does the math actually work out? Let's take a quick look at the government's finances, where the money comes from, and where it all goes. So this chart breaks down where every single rupee of government money comes from. Take a look at the biggest slice, 24%. That's from borrowings and other liabilities. Right behind that, you've got income tax from individuals and tax from corporations. Understanding this is key to understanding the financial pressures they're facing. And this is the other side of the coin. where that rupee goes. The two largest chunks are the state's share of taxes and duties, and interest payments on government debt. Each of those takes up about a fifth of the entire budget. Those are huge, mostly fixed costs that really shape all the other spending decisions.
So, with that much borrowing and those big interest payments, it is absolutely no surprise that a major theme of this budget is fiscal discipline. The government is making a real effort to manage its debt and shrink the deficit. It's a process they call fiscal consolidation. And you can see from this chart, they are making progress. The fiscal deficit, which is basically the shortfall between what the government earns and what it spends, is trending down. The target for this new fiscal year is to get it down to 4.3% of GDP, which is a small but steady step toward better financial stability.
So after digging into the strategy, the blueprint, and the numbers, what's the big picture here? What's the main thing we should all take away from this?
If there is one sentence you remember, make it this one. This budget represents a very clear choice. It's a pivot away from short-term subsidies and a move towards a long-term strategy of building up infrastructure and domestic capability.
And that leaves us with one final crucial question. In such a turbulent world, is this bet on building from within, on infrastructure and manufacturing, the right path forward? Honestly, only time will tell if this long-term gamble pays off for one of the world's most dynamic and important economies.